shoot, fire away, all cylinders. As my camera is gonna go crazy. Hopefully for those watching,
You have like a
you'll be able
ghost
to
in
deal
your
with it.
camera. It's really
Um,
weird.
it's a little scary, but it's exciting to be back on the airwaves. We've
It
taken a
is.
couple weeks off. Cheers to Mark, and we're back here. And what a great episode we've got in store for everybody. Talking the NFL uh, schedule release, international games. We'll kind of dive into it. Mark has some thoughts on some of the first weeks. And how that's going to pan out for certain teams. We've got a lot of breaking news that's no longer breaking, stale, broken news that we will bring you today. Give our thoughts on George Pickens, Brock Purdy, all of that stuff. A lot to get through today. But Mark, excited to see you. And yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks for
Yeah.
us both, and in the NFL.
I
Not a dull week.
No, I mean, we're already heading into Memorial Day weekend, the start of summer. We're literally 3 weeks away from certain camps getting going in late June. I know that like OTA stuff. So it's really exciting time in football. And the schedule released last week. We had some scheduling. You and I had scheduling difficulties, so we're like, let's
Yep.
not rush it. Let's let it sit for a week or two, and now let's digest it. And so I can't wait to dive into this. I think the NFL, once again, they just know what they're doing, man. They get it. They understand scheduling. I will. A bulk of the show will be me giving you my through 4 weeks predictions, which I'm really excited about. I picked every game with my gut, and there's some really shocking results, and I think that's going to be really good fodder for us to dig into. Certain teams have some brutal schedules early, and certain teams have cakewalks. And if they can start 4-0, 3-1, as we know, that sets you up extremely well to make the playoffs, even in a 17-game season. So we'll have some fun with that.
It's talked about a lot in fantasy football circles, especially of you can't win the draft or win the league in the first round, but you can lose it. A similar concept applies to the NFL. First month of the season, you can lose your season if you get off to a really rocky start and set yourself up for a major uphill battle. Other teams are going to leave you in the dust. And so, yeah, the first 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, super important to the NFL schedule. So,
hey, your mic is on to just your laptop or whatever. Just let me know.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You can adjust it. Yeah. Well, let's start with some of the news and notes. Obviously, as we mentioned, no longer breaking, but we haven't had a chance to kind of give our thoughts on it, so we're kind of rifle through some of these. A lot of big stuff, including a big contract.
Yeah, we'll start off with the big one with Brock Purdy being inked to a 5-year, $265 million deal. He is making over $50 million a season to be the 49ers quarterback for the foreseeable future. Overall surprise compensation, in my view. Maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise because we've seen it time and time again when a quarterback is good enough. A lot of teams have shown willingness to pay them salary that's worth maybe more than what they're producing on the field. We've seen it recently with Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, and now Brock Purdy. What did you make of this situation with the 49ers? Was it a case of we're not going to go and revert all the way back to square one? It's more of a, being familiar with the devil versus the devil you don't.
Well, one of the things that we knew we were waiting on this contract for was that then the Niners had other moves to make. We saw the Fred Warner deal get done last night or this morning. I can't remember when. But again, they couldn't do that deal until it's like, what's going on with Brock Purdy's deal. So the timing of it felt right. Like, okay, early in the offseason, before all the camps, everything is going, let's just get this done so it's not a talking point when the reporters show up, right? As far as the money goes, I've been very vocal. I would have capped it at $45 million a year, and I would have said it's fully guaranteed 4 years, $45 million. But you're putting a real strain on the cap. I know the cap only goes up, but you're putting a real strain on your cap. And we have seen only Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes have ginormous contracts and win Super Bowls. I guess you could also throw Matt Stafford into that realm. But when you look at quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, Matt Stafford, and Patrick Mahomes, they're three of the top 6-7 guys in the league. I would put Purdy in that 9 through 15 range, kind of based on your own preferences. And so far, those guys who've gotten big contracts like Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, we've seen playoffs and fine, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, but no Super Bowl. So there's more evidence to point to the Niners will be a quality team that's he plays well enough to get them to the playoffs, but when it comes down to it, it'll look like a team that's missing 2 or 3 guys, elite players, and that might be because of the contract. I did tweet out, and I'm going to stand by this. Over the length of this contract, over the next 5 years, my prediction is the Niners will miss the playoffs more than they make the playoffs.
Yeah, so missing it 3 times and making it twice.
That's my guess. I think part of that is I think the Rams are the best team in that division this morning. Seattle, I think, is making some really interesting moves with Sam Darnold and kind of retooling the culture there in Seattle. And Arizona they're in a must-win, like prove-it year this year. And so I think it's with San Francisco's injuries and a kind of a dirge of talent for where they've had to, let guys go and get older. I think this could be one of the years they miss it. And then it's 2-2 over the next 4 seasons with San Francisco's injury history and with how many veterans are going to leave that team over the next 4 years after next year. I feel confident in that prediction.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with it. And even if they go to the playoffs 3 out of the 5 years, what confidence do we have that they're going to be able to make a significant run and win a Super Bowl? It seems like the window has passed this team by, and they are in that weird phase of like needing to rebuild to some extent. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is still Christian McCaffrey. At least we think he is. And Brandon Ayuk, they've got him there, and Ricky Pearsall, hoping to take the next step forward. They inked Fred Warner to the deal. So yeah, they've got some, infrastructure in place. There's a lot of positions on this team that need work, including that offensive line. And that's going to be the main driver in a Kyle Shanahan offense, in any offense in the NFL, but especially Kyle Shanahan's. That's where the main focus is. If they can't get that right, then this is all for naught. And that's why I don't understand paying this much money to a guy that's not an elevator. He's just a guy that executes a system well. And that there is a place for those guys in the league. There aren't 32 of those guys that are capable quarterbacks. So he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, but
100%.
You're worth what people are willing to pay you. So I give him that, but and probably another team would have given him that. Maybe that's what the 49ers are worried about. But as a team, you got to make some tough choices sometimes. And I think this could come back to bite them, but we'll see. Maybe he keeps improving and he takes the next step.
I think the thing that pisses me off as a fan of football is Kyle Shanahan and that Niners system is the perfect system for it's like they should be the guinea pig to try the system over the star, in the sense that, like, if Shanahan said, hey, we're going to go with Brock Purdy again this year, we're not going to pay him. And then next year, we're just going to draft another quarterback and start again. Like I believe if there's anyone in the NFL with that system, with talent around him in the right places, could just plug and play a new rookie quarterback and never have to sign a quarterback to a giant deal unless they hit on a guy and he becomes an elevator like a Allen or a Mahomes. They are the perfect system for the guinea pig of, like, can you just draft a quarterback, start him for 4 years, and then move on and start another? Now, listen, the Bears are doing that. They've done it 3 years, 3 quarterbacks in a row, but they're the worst team in the NFL for that guinea pig style. It's not working so far for them. We hope that changes now, as Bears Nation is with me. But Shanahan, I think, would have been the interesting one to see if that could make happen. So I'm bummed that we don't get to see that. But I will not feel bad for Niners fans if in the end of this contract, Brock Purdy has less playoff wins than he has already.
It could happen. Absolutely could happen. All right, let's move on to other quarterback news. Derek Carr announcing his retirement.
Yeah.
I
R.I.P.
guess it wasn't a surprise, but it was a surprise when it popped up because I had kind of forgotten about it, honestly, briefly. But we had talked about this being a potential issue for the Saints with his injury concerns, his shoulder, and we weren't sure if he was going to be ready for the 2025 season, and that's probably why they drafted quarterback Tyler Shugg as high as they did out of Louisville. Now they have 3 really young quarterbacks, 1 rookie, competing for that starting spot in 2025 with a brand new head coach. About as close to a fresh start in New Orleans as you're going to get for a team that doesn't do resets. So from that aspect, it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a New Orleans Saints fan. I know your colleague, Nick, correct?
Yeah.
Who joined us on the live stream for the draft. I'm curious to hear like what you've heard from him, being the closest Saints fan to us, because Derek Carr retiring after a solid, successful career. Obviously, he's not going to be Hall of Famer, but a really solid quarterback, and just seemed like the rehab and going through that whole process wasn't going to be worth it for him in the long run. So now the Saints are starting over, essentially.
I was surprised when the news dropped, just because I didn't know the severity was like fix it or retire. Yeah. And from now that time has passed, we now know that basically it was Derek saying, I would have to either get the surgery and rehab for a year and then play the following year, or I can just call it and just say, listen, this has been great 10 years and I'm moving on. And I if that's the options he faced, I think it's perfect. And it makes so much sense that he decided to retire, because Derek Carr had a very fine NFL career. He had the type of NFL career of quarterbacks from like the 70s and 80s. You can go and look at quarterbacks from the 70s and 80s. You had a lot of guys who started for 8, 9, 10 years who had losing records, but they were just the quarterback, because the quarterback position was different back then. And they would throw like 20 touchdowns and 15 interceptions in a year, but they would hand the ball off to their star running back over and over and over and over again. And Derek Carr, though, was talented enough to be successful in the modern NFL, but he was the typical, like, kind of like Kyler Murray is now the next Derek Carr, where it's like the flashes, but the overall lack of just consistency at the elite level feels like you're going to need to do
Jimmy
more.
Garoppolo-esque,
bigger and stronger,
maybe a little
than
bit better.
Jimmy. Which I think Jimmy and Derek were in the same draft class, by the way. I think that's a funny. I don't think there's any more quarterbacks. I think I saw that from the 2014 NFL draft. So I agree with you 100% on your take on the Saints. I think they're in a great spot to have a really bad year. They're in cap hell still. So just let this year go. See if Shook or Rattler wants to step up and become like a stud. If either of them do, you're still probably not going to win a ton of games. But then you say, hey, we can take a lot of best player available at the top of the draft next year, or you can take maybe the elite, franchise-changing quarterback for your young head coach with an offensive mind. I think the Saints are in it's tough because every year you want your team to compete. The Saints are doing what I did last year, which is like the most important thing is to figure out if Rattler or Shook is the guy. And if you can leave the year with that question answered, then it was a success.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And the Saints are, it's kind of like the Steelers in a lot of ways. You're like, they're going to win the same amount of games roughly with Derek Carr or with backup quarterback. It's not a slight to Derek Carr at all. It's just like, they're a pretty well-run franchise. They're a team that drafts relatively well. They have players, and they're in an easy division in this case. So, the Saints' floor is still pretty high, I would think. Now, we'll see. This is the first time we're going to see like a full season led by either a rookie quarterback or an unproven quarterback for the Saints. Pretty much most of the seasons of the last 6 years have been starting with a guy, a known commodity, and ending with a project or an unknown. But now we're going to get a full season. So maybe this would be the year where they do kind of get into that top 5 pick category. But a lot of that will be determined by the quarterback play and Kellen Moore as a first-time head coach.
I love what you said there. And I think what you were trying to maybe say is the Saints have done enough in the last 20 years to remove themselves from the category of like the Browns, the Jets, the Bears, the Commanders.
They're just not falling on their faces.
If I am a free agent, I will consider New Orleans. If I am a rookie, I'm not angry that I'm going to New Orleans. Sean Payton and Drew Brees changed the culture enough to where it's like, this is not the Jets. This is not the Browns, right? This is not the Jags.
Correct.
We are slightly above that, but now it's really interesting because a couple rough years, and if Kellen Moore isn't the coach, then maybe they start falling back towards that category. So the next 2 years for the Saints getting it right is going to be really important.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to touch on before we get to more NFL player news is that the owners just passed the resolution to allow NFL players to now participate in flag football in the Olympics, in the 2028 Olympics.
3 years from right now.
I didn't think they were going to pass it. I would think owners are so hell-bent on not letting their players participate in any physical activities outside of the season. But this is going to do more to grow the game and let players have a chance at winning a gold medal that players in most other professional sports have that opportunity to do.
Listen, I think for me, I didn't hear any buzz before like yesterday's Adam Schefter report that was basically like, hey, the vote's tomorrow and it looks like they're going to pass it. I hadn't read or been in touch with like the buzz of like, will they or won't we? So I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised. But I think one of the things you have to remember is we talk about a lot on the show. To try to say who do you want for the next 10 years is a absolutely dumb question in NFL lore. 10 years, Derek Carr, he just had a 10-year career, retired. 10 years is a
long time.
Saying who do you want for the next 2 years, 3 years is way more of a reasonable ask. And I'll say this, 3 years from right now, a lot of people are like, oh, Lamar Jackson, Justin Jefferson. In 3 years, is Justin Jefferson going to be the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL? I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not. You know what I mean? Like,
not. Yeah.
So in 3 years from now, is Lamar Jackson going to be still at his physical peak to where it's like, is he really better than maybe Cam Ward becomes just a freak and he's entering his prime in 3 years? So to me, the thing that will be really exciting is over the next 3 years, seeing which players slowly start kind of dropping see you in 2028, because that's going to be the thing, right? This is brand new. It's brand new. So who's going to be in charge of making the roster? Like, and you Team USA basketball, it was Coach K, and he handed it to Pop, who Pop handed it to Steve Kerr. So it's still Steve Kerr's thing right now. So Steve Kerr basically gets to sit there with the powers that be and kind of say, who do we want to invite? So who's going to be that guy? Who's the flag football coach? There's going to need to be a Team USA power structure. And once that power structure gets involved, that's when you'll start to say, okay. If you had to ask me, I want Andy Reid to be the head coach. Because even if he retires by then, Andy Reid's system is the perfect flag football.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. No, he would come up with such fun stuff too.
Yeah. Like you don't want Harbaugh or Ben Johnson, who's like 2 tight ends, run the ball, play action. No.
Dude, bring Ditka back, man. Have Ditka coach.
Right. And so it's like, okay, if you can get and then you say to yourself, all right, from what I've read, the key to flag football success is mobile quarterback. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So does that mean mobile like Patrick Mahomes mobile, or does that mean mobile like Lamar Jackson mobile? So I'm really fascinated over the next couple of years to see which players start sprinkling their names into it. And I can't wait for it. I'm glad they passed it because I think it's going to be awesome, and it'll be a very embarrassing, like all the pressure on Team USA. Like there's pressure on Team USA to win the gold in basketball. You better win gold in flag football.
No, that's a great point by you about the years too. I mean, you absolutely gotta take that into account. Like, don't start building your
Arch
teams right
Manning.
now because it's
3
gonna
years
look
from
a
now, it
lot
might be
different.
Arch Manning.
Yeah, right. No kidding. I also think it'll be interesting to see, like, or just a thought experiment of like who would dominate at this, because it's probably not going to happen in 3 years. But Tyreek Hill was like tailor made for this, you know. Um, just a lot, so many athletes in the NFL that would have been Barry Sanders would have been like amazing
Oh my God.
in this. So, um, yeah, but it'll be fun to see. I'm excited to see the NFL players on display at the biggest stage going for gold, and you're right. The pressure is on them all to represent the US and to get that gold, cuz that would be pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
So let's talk some other news. Justin Tucker released by the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, he faces 16 allegations
Oh,
of
no. It's
misconduct.
performance based.
It is. He had a really, he didn't just have a down year. He had a really bad year.
He had a bad year for any
objectively
kicker. For just
as
as a
an
kicker,
NFL
it's a
kicker.
bad year. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Very poor. So he's going to be looking for work. They did kind of signal this when they drafted a kicker this year as well. Yeah, man, sometimes the wheels fall off, and it was an easy time as well for the Baltimore Ravens to let go. I'm actually surprised it took this long, because the performance was so bad that it would have been an easy choice from them right out of the gate. But yeah, here we are, Justin Tucker. We'll see what happens in terms of his legacy, but a rough way to go out in terms of the going out with a whimper, no doubt.
It's weird because he's not on a roster right now. And here's a guy that 2 years ago you'd argue he's like first ballot Hall of Famer. And now it's a guy who you argue can't get a job in the NFL probably at all this year, because teams are just going to wait to see what happens with this stuff. And maybe that's a good thing for him to just stay out of kicking, because missing kicks and dealing with allegations is a lot like Deshaun Watson with bad performance, with the allegations still hanging over his head. So go out there, try to clear your name if you can. If you are innocent, if you're guilty, you're not going to be able to clear your name. They're going to get to the bottom of it. And if you can clear your name, I have a feeling he'll keep himself in shape and try to have at least one redemption year. And if he clears his name and comes back for a team and has a really great year and a redemption year, then the Hall of Fame is like right back on, right? Because those last 2 years will balance each other out. And you could say, hey, the guy was innocent and being accused of all this. No wonder he had a rough year. And he clears his name, comes back, and has a great year. But that's a lot of ifs, right? I'm just, again, trying to talk the football story. I'm sure we'll talk the legal story more once we actually get into the nitty gritty of whatever is happening actually in the court of law.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. But I agree. It may not be the end of Justin Tucker in the NFL. I tend to think it's going to be, but there's certainly a possibility that he is still playing in the NFL this upcoming season. Let's talk about Trey Hendrickson. The guy has been asking for a new contract for quite a while. He has now come out and kind of made this a public thing. He said, I was waiting. I wanted to do this civilly, but the Bengals are just not even entertaining discussions at this point. And he's also accusing them of not holding up to their word. When they told him last offseason that they'll be able to get it done and that they're motivated to do it this year. And now he's basically saying it's crickets. It is wild to me that a team like the Bengals doesn't realize not just the optics of it, but the practicality of rewarding a player of this caliber on the side of the ball that you are in desperate need of players at. So to get rid of an all-timer in terms of, well, not all-timer, but one of the league's best,
a current
all-time
great player.
To and obviously they paid a lot for the wide receivers. They paid a lot for Burrow. I get it, but man, there are just some guys you got to pay for, and he's an edge rusher, premium position at the height of his career. It's just it's the Bengals being the Bengals, Mark, is really what it comes down to.
It's got to be frustrating if you're a Bengals fan. At this point, I think the Bengals, listen, if you're not going to sign him, trade him now and get as much as you can for him, a player to help you right now, and maybe a really, a second or third round pick next year. Maybe you can sneak someone's first. I don't know. But if you say, hey, give me a starting Pro Bowl caliber player and a second round pick, I think teams would do that for a player like Trey Hendrickson. I think I think there's a team like my team, the Chicago Bears, should absolutely be in on something like that. I think teams like Detroit should absolutely be in on something like that. I think teams like the 49ers, who have now a work in progress with some new additions of the defensive line. I think there's win now teams. I think the Kansas City Chiefs should absolutely try to steal away from the Bengals and make them look dumb and stupid. I think the Buffalo Bills, there's plenty of teams out there that could use Trey Hendrickson and could give up a starter at another position to prioritize the most important position of need on defense right now, and that's edge rusher and getting after the quarterback.
Before we get into the NFL schedule and some of the highlights and the international games and all that jazz, let's talk about one more element of breaking news over the last week, which was George Pickens being traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for Dallas's third-round pick and their fifth-round pick in 2027. Pittsburgh giving them back a seventh-round pick in return in 2027 as well. I have mixed feelings about this one, to be quite honest with you, Mark. I felt at this point that they weren't going to be getting much of a big return for George Pickens. You have this tempting situation of DK Metcalf and Pickens on the outside. Really difficult for defenses to plan for, and that's going to open up your run game significantly, which is Arthur Smith's bread and butter. You drafted Caleb Johnson, like that's going to give him a lot of light boxes to run through. Now it feels a lot to me like they're in the situation they were in the beginning of last year. They have a clear wide receiver one and really a lot of question marks. So that's the issue I take with it. On the flip side, I'm happy that Pittsburgh did get compensation of a third round pick. I mean, would I have loved a second? Absolutely. But it was becoming more clear that they weren't going to be able to get that. They almost for sure weren't going to pay him. And we know now that that wasn't going to happen. And so their opportunity to get compensation for him was now. They were offered fourth round picks throughout the pre-draft and during the draft process. And we were able to get the price lifted to a third rounder. So ultimately, it's hard for me to be upset with the return. But it is just a situation where I just don't know where Pittsburgh's going with the wide receiver position. They signed Robert Woods, and they're forcing themselves to have to draft one again next year. But again, I think it's them stockpiling compensation to be able to make some big moves to move up in the draft next year for a quarterback. If that doesn't happen, then a lot of this is really unfortunate.
Dude, if the Pittsburgh Steelers call me about trading one of their wide receivers, I'm hanging up.
Don't do it.
From Antonio Brown to Deontay Johnson.
Martavis Bryant.
The guy, what's the guy who the Bears took? Chase Claypool. Yeah. And now possibly with George Pickens, maybe he bucks the trend. But the trend is when the Pittsburgh Steelers get a lot out of wide receivers who are very loud, and then as soon as they're gone, they absolutely implode. And listen, I can't wait to watch Dallas have a chance to maybe implode. I think it'll be a really fun storyline. But I also think Dallas, listen, they had to do something. Dallas needed a second playmaker desperately. Listen, they addressed the running back position in the draft. They had to. And then they said to themselves, listen, we have our go-to number one guy. And as good as Pickens is, even he has to realize that dude's the number one. You know what I mean? Like, so when you have a situation like that, it can hopefully quell the locker room. And everyone in that locker room can sit there and be like, just we want you to be here, but CeeDee Lamb is number one. So if you start bitching and moaning about shit, CeeDee's the number one wide receiver. And CeeDee's more
Hey,
talented.
CD said there is no number one wide receiver.
Well, and that's good of him. That's good of him to say.
is.
But
It is.
you need that locker room kind of culture. So, listen, Pittsburgh. When we'll get to it here with the schedule and the picks, Pittsburgh is still right now one of the 2 or 3 most fascinating teams going into next year, in my opinion, because again, it just has a win now defense with some nice weapons on offense, and yet Mason Rudolph or the 5th rounder from Ohio State. So it's a very interesting time in the Steel City.
It is. It really is.
But getting a 3rd rounder was a win. I think getting a 3rd rounder was a win.
Yeah, I do too. And they get that, that pick swap again, which, that's not going to help them until 2027. But that's kind of becoming an Omar Khan signature of just getting that little bit extra, 1 round ahead in a future draft. So,
and
yeah, you'll take it. And, again, he wasn't going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2026. So
and that's the thing. So, if you're a team and you trade for a guy, the Bears just signed Joe Thuney today. That deal came off. And we've been waiting. Why? Because if you trade for a guy whose contract's expiring, wants a new contract, you're giving stuff up and you have to sign them. So
right.
If your team just gives up a 3rd rounder and then they're going to give Pickens $70 million, that's not the best spot to be unless he becomes instantly the best number 2 wide receiver in the NFL and has 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns and helps lead Dallas to the 2nd round of the playoffs. Then you say, all right, we're totally good with it. The Bears, what they did with the Joe Thuney contract, brilliant. I mean, yeah, you had to give up something to get him, but you converted the signing bonus into basically 2 years of guaranteed salary with some other incentives. You lock him up for 2 years. You still have cap flexibility. That's the type of stuff you like to see. So we'll see if Dallas can do a smart deal with Pickens, or if they'll be Dallas and
or if Pickens will be, a Pittsburgh Steelers former quarterback or wide receiver. So, there is that. All right, let's look real quick. We'll talk about several elements of the schedule, but I did want to share this real quick. The international game. This is our slate here for the upcoming season. I'll zoom in.
So Vikings fans have a right to be pissed, and if I was a Vikings fan, I would be
back in New Orleans, but at least they don't, or in London, but at least they don't have to. Oh no, it's not. Why was I thinking back to back in London? No,
they
go Dublin to London.
So not even they just get to stay in London. They have to move time zones again to a new hotel, to a new facility. 2 weeks.
Is it across time zones?
Well, yeah, because they're going from
Dublin to London.
I guess it's same time zone, but so that's like flying from Chicago to St. Louis. So that's not that bad, but still, it's like pack up your shit. We're going to a different hotel. Now the Vikings do benefit from the fact that those are both considered road games for them, and so the Vikings
get to keep
when you talk about actual games at home versus games on the road in a traditional slate, that's a benefit for them. In their own way. But Dan, that's a brutal thing. Also for the Chargers and the Chiefs having to go all the way to Sao Paulo to play a game.
Yeah.
That's awful. The Chargers' travel this year is like 8,000 miles more than anyone else's travel. It's
in NFL history, actually. They are traveling more than any team has ever traveled in NFL history.
And I think the Bengals are they travel 3,000 miles less than any other team because the AFC North is so close, and then they're out of schedule as the AFC South and the NFC North. So it's like bus rides. I mean, it's nothing for them. So that sticks out to me. The other thing that sticks out to me is you don't have to watch Sunday, November 5th. You don't have to watch the Falcons and the Colts.
November 9th. Yeah.
Definitely
do not need to tune into that one. In Berlin, the one Berlin game too. That's unfortunate. Not a big fan, but I am a fan of a lot of these matchups.
I'm excited to watch the Dublin game.
Will be interesting.
Yeah.
I think Commanders Dolphins will certainly be interesting. Like one of those two teams is definitely going to be in play at that point in the season. Potentially both. And Rams Jaguars. and Vikings Browns, I guess, isn't going to be super exciting.
We'll see. The Vikings, I mean, we don't. They're one of the other top 3 teams that I just have no real idea what they're going to look like.
Well, it could be 2 quarterbacks that we have no idea what they're bringing to the table. It could be J.J. McCarthy, Shedeur Sanders, or Dylan Gabriel, or something like that. Very interesting. I am very excited to have Pittsburgh, opening up games in Dublin. I'm excited to see how that pans out. I'm hoping that that's going to be a yearly thing.
Well, it's going to be a home crowd too.
Yeah, for sure. That's a huge, huge contingent of Steelers fans in Ireland, of course, because of the Rooney family. So really hoping that becomes kind of a mainstay.
Yeah. Did you read that? I heard this, that the NFL's goal in their negotiations for the 18-game season, part of what they're going to use as a chip to say, okay, we'll give you players maybe something you want, but we get what we want, is their goal is to have a foreign game every week, that there is an international game every week.
That makes sense.
I will just say this, Goodell, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. I don't think the NFL is going to lose the title of the most popular sport on planet Earth anytime soon.
But don't oversaturate yourself.
Dude, Dan, like, look at that first weekend. You have Thursday, you have Friday, you have full slate Sunday, you have Monday. And then you're asking fans to say, hey, honey, sorry, no, we can't go run errands Sunday morning because actually the kickoff for my team is at 8 a.m. And then, of course, I got to watch football the rest of the day or whatever it might be. You're asking for a lot. You and I are both married men.
Yeah.
We know how precious Sunday morning is. We know how precious Saturday is when there's not a giant college football game. I can usually, like, once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, be like, honey, Saturday we can do whatever you want, except for like at 3:00, can I just spend like 2 hours watching the bulk of Texas, Oklahoma, or whatever it might be? So you're asking for a ton. And I just caution the NFL from continuing that idea of 18 international games.
Yeah.
And also the other thing about that is the schedule this year, for the first time ever, not every team had to be guaranteed a primetime game. The Titans, the Browns, and the Saints, no primetime games. The NFL laughing in the face of the number 1 pick, Cam Ward. I think that's a bit mistake.
Yeah. I honestly, I didn't consider that a whole lot, but that's a good point. That is a tough, welcome to the NFL type of situation. But hey, I mean, what are you going to, would you rather go to the Mile High Stadium though in week 12? Probably not.
Well, dude, but that's the other thing too, is like, I secretly now, like, looking back on it last year, I wish that I had no primetime games with Caleb Williams, because one of them was that Thursday night debacle against Seattle where he threw an amazing touchdown pass, but it got called back on a bullshit hold call, and the Bears lost that game 6-3. So there's now the Bears have 5 primetime games. Now, some people define primetime as only night games. I define primetime as you are the thing. Because I would even argue, I don't include it, but I would argue that, like, Fox's America's Game of the Week is also kind of a primetime game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't include that, but I think you could make the argument for that.
Sure, yeah, because it's one of a couple games in a time slot, and it's the game that's being promoted.
And it's on 75% of the TVs on Fox, network or whatever it might be. So
that makes perfect sense. I know you wanted to walk through like the first couple weeks of the season, like some thoughts you had on it. I'm really interested to hear this out because I haven't heard your takes on this.
So when the schedule came out, I told you, I was like, my goal, what I'm going to do is what we do every year, like the last week, 2 weeks before the season kicks off, is where we go through and we just pick the games, right? Yeah. So I did that for weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. I went to 1, 2, and 3, and 4 because at week 5, the bye week starts, which it sucks that the Bears have a week 5 bye. We'll save that for later.
Steelers do too, man. It sucks. I hate it.
So also beyond week 4, that's when injuries really historically start piling up, right? You should hope that your team can stay relatively healthy weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go by, I did this, I picked the games off my gut, and I'm going to go division by division really quickly. And then you can kind of ask me questions, and I'll give you some of my notes that I made about this. You ready? We'll start with the AFC.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll start with your Pittsburgh Steelers, AFC North. So after I picked 4 games, I had I looked it up, the totals. The Bengals were 4-0, the Ravens were 2-2, the Steelers were 2-2, and the Browns 0-4. Does that shock you?
No, that doesn't shock me. That sounds like that would hold up. So Ravens being 2-2 is a little surprising.
So I'll say this with the Ravens. The Ravens have a brutal 3 of their first 4 games are the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Bills. So Baltimore is a absolute slog of a tough start. The Bengals, it shocked me the Bengals were 4-0 because I think the Bengals are going to bounce back. But again, we just talked about Trey Henderson, the defense. But the Bengals' first 4 games, Dan, Browns, Jags, Vikings, Broncos. And so I look at that and I'm just off my gut going, well, I like Joe Burrow in all of those matchups. Steelers 2-2. I originally had them 1-3, and I thought, no, I don't like that because my gut says Aaron Rodgers will still play. But the Steelers, Dan, and I think, you can speak on this too, another kind of really tough schedule for Pittsburgh. We talked about it a lot last year. And this year, at the Jets, home against Seattle, which I think Seattle is poised to be better this year, at Patriots, and then they're in Dublin against the Vikings, which when you travel, you never know what happens. So it's not the easiest start. I think the Jets.
Warren Sharp also said that they have the toughest finish to the season for the second year in the row. Yeah. I mean, we all know what happened during that 5-game nightmare last year.
Oh, I know. Well, and for the Browns 0-4, I'll just say this really quickly.
The Browns' schedule is tough. Talk about insane. It. The Browns have a very tough schedule.
They have Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions. Oh, that's 0-4.
Yeah.
Now,
what they'll do the finish of the season's really rough too. Like the Browns are in for a rough year, man.
What they'll do is Joe Flacco will win week 1 against the Bengals. The Bengals will start 0-1 again, and then they'll quickly lose the next 3 games. All right. So the AFC South, let's move there. Texans 3-1, Titans 1-3, Jags 1-3, Colts 0-4. So again, I look at this and I'm like, whoa. It's a lot of losses.
A lot of losses.
The Jags have to win week 1 because after week 1, the Jags have Bengals, Texans, Niners. That's not easy for a Jags team that has a lot to prove this year.
And then the Chiefs after that, and the Rams a couple weeks later. It gets ugly quick.
The Colts, obviously, I like their coach. I think their roster's fine. The quarterback's a huge question mark. They start with Dolphins, Broncos, Titans, Rams. The Titans, maybe, but I like all those other teams better than the Colts. So that's where my thought was on that. The Titans, obviously, a tricky schedule, and it's a rookie quarterback. I think it's going to take a learning curve. And then the Texans, not only do I think the Texans are the best team in that division, they won 10 games last year. They're 2 times in a row to the playoffs. They have a pretty nice start. I think they lose on the road week 1 against the Rams, and then they play the Bucks, the Jags, and the Titans. I think they can go 3-0 during that stretch and then find themselves at 3-1.
Yeah. And then they play the Ravens after that before the bye. So you put yourself at 3-2 going into week 7. You feel pretty decent. No issues there.
So if one division has a lot of losing teams, another division has to have a lot of winning teams, right? And that's the AFC East. I have the Bills at 4-0, Miami 3-1, New England 3-1, and the Jets 1-3. So obviously you're going Mark. New England. Dan, I think New England got a giant coaching upgrade. I think they got a giant culture upgrade.
Yes.
And I think that New England got an absolute upgrade with their weapons, which they struggle with. Remember, they signed Stephon Diggs. They improved their offensive line, and they start hosting the Raiders at Miami, hosting your Steelers, and then hosting the Panthers. You're not telling me that's not 2-2, 3-1. Like, I think it's very plausible.
Now, I think 3-1 is very plausible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so,
I mean, I think Raiders Panthers are almost guaranteed wins, and then the Dolphins game could be kind of go either way.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Pittsburgh game could go either way too.
Now let's be honest. The Bills, it's not the hardest schedule, but it's not easy to start the year. They start hosting the Ravens. I think that's a win because they're at home, Sunday Night Football. And I think right now, the Bills as constructed are very apt to compete head on with the Ravens. We saw them do that in the playoffs. And then you have the Jets, the Dolphins, the Saints. So I think the Bills are poised for a 4-0, a possible 4-0, 3-1 start. I think
3-0 is probably more likely. I think that week 1 game is going to be tough, and that, there's always weird Dolphins, Bills, or like interdivisional games get kind of wonky. So Dolphins, like the Jets could pull off something weird or something.
Yeah.
But
Dolphins 3-1. You say to yourself, Mark, come on, Miami. Well, listen, Tua early in the season, warm weather, September, fully healthy. He puts up numbies, and I think this is a team that I super bet you this a lot, but your freeze frame looked so much like Adam Scott. I never get that I look like Adam Scott, Rodney Edwards. I never get that. I get a lot of I get Vince Vaughn. I get when I wear my glasses, I get Clark Kent if he was chubby, and then I get Teller from Penn and Teller, who's the one who talks, right? Or
interesting. Okay,
I think it's my.
I don't
voice.
Really see that.
I think it's my voice and my size. I think I do sound a little bit like Penn, and I talk at his
the presentation, the gravitas,
very fast cadence. So Miami, really quickly. I'll take Adam Scott though. Severance, great show. Miami at Colts. I think that's a win. Hosting Patriots, toss up. At Bills, probably a loss, but then they host the Jets. So they have a chance, I think, to make some damage early in the season. And the Jets, I think the Jets are going to be better. I think Justin Fields is going to be a good player for them. But again, kind of a tough start. So I think they find themselves at 1-3, but they claw back. I don't think the Jets are picking top 4, top 5 next year. I think they're going to be sneaky, a 7-8 win team, but we can talk about that more later. Finally, with the AFC West, Chiefs 4-0, Chargers 3-1, Broncos 2-2, Raiders 0-4. Now, again, you're saying, Mark, the Chiefs' schedule is really brutal. It is, but this is the first time in what, 3 years, 4 years that we've seen a Chiefs team come in, chip on the shoulder, pissed off. They're going to get Rice back, it looks like, to start the season. No word yet on suspension. This is an offense that has more weapons, and I think a defense that is still led by Chris Jones, who's still an elite player and got positionally a little bit younger and smarter on the defensive side. So you actually have, listen, they have the Chargers, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Ravens. It's not easy, but I think you're going to see a ticked off Mahomes. I think you're going to see a Mahomes that is going for the MVP. I think you're going to see a Mahomes and Andy Reid that are going to be so laser focused after that loss. I really think this Chiefs team has a chance to be special to start the year. They're always great in September, so that's why they're 4-0. Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. Listen, the Raiders, I like Geno Smith. I like the Pete Carroll thing. I think they're more stable as a franchise. I didn't like that I had them at 0-4, but you tell me where their wins are. At New England, home against the Chargers, at the Commanders, and then home against the Bears. So maybe the win is the Bears. I don't think so. I think the Bears are better.
I could see them beating the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers are that great. They've got a better team. There's no doubt. I think Pete Carroll is. 0-4 just seems that's hard to swallow.
They'll probably win one of those.
3 is more palatable for sure.
Now, if they upset the Pats week 1, I wouldn't be shocked. And then maybe they steal one against like the Chargers and they go 2-0 and then they lose 2. So that was one of those, just on the gut after analyzing it. I'm like, I don't love that, but it is what it is.
Sure.
So let's jump into the NFC South. This is an ugly division. I think, again, Tampa and Atlanta are the teams to beat. I have Tampa and Atlanta both at 2-2, Carolina 1-3. And then I have the Saints at 0-4. I did this obviously after the Derek Carr retirement. Dan, I want to go through Carolina really quickly here. I think Carolina is a team that's poised to maybe shock some people.
Yep.
But it's a tough start at the Jags, at the Cardinals. Their first home game is against a Falcons team that I think is just better than them. And then they go at New England. So 3 of 4 on the road. And they're at best equal to those 3 guys. I mean, I think the Jaguars are going to come out feisty. I think the Cardinals, again, they're in a win now mode. The Panthers 0-2 might be on the road to start the season. And then the division rival to your home game. I think the Panthers might be a better team, but I think they might be 1-3, at best to start the season.
No, I could absolutely see that.
NFL East. This one also really surprised me. I have the Commanders at 3-1. The Cowboys and the Eagles both at 1-3, and then the Giants at 0-4. So let's talk through Philly and Dallas here really quick, right? What did I write down? I said Eagles must win week 1. Why? They're home against the Cowboys. They start the season. Because weeks 2, 3, and 4 at the Chiefs, hosting the Rams, at the Buccaneers. Now, obviously, I'm putting a little bit of my Rams love into this. I think the Rams played the toughest game.
Well, they almost beat them. Yeah.
They beat them at Philly. And this is, again, warm weather. And let's not forget, Jalen Hurts now, for 7 years in a row, I think 8 years in a row, a new offensive coordinator. From his time in Alabama to Oklahoma to the NFL. We saw what happened after the Eagles lost the Super Bowl and had to change coordinators. The next year was shaky at best. Hurts did not look great. I think with that tough start, it would not surprise me that Philadelphia gets off to a slow start. Now, Philly's got some winnable games. I think Philly's going to make the playoffs, but I think it's plausible. So don't jump on me, Eagles fans, that they're 1-3. You're a hater. I'm not a hater. I like Philly, but I think it's a really tough start. Dallas, same thing, and I just don't have a ton of faith in Dallas with their new head coach. Giants 0-4, again, not the easiest start, and I just have no faith in the Giants. If Daboll...
it's a pretty tough start. 2 straight road games against the division opponents.
Yes.
That's hard. That's a hard start to the year.
And I think Daboll is... I'm not a fan... Oh, whoa.
What happened? You look fine on our end here.
I got a phone call, and it pops up on my Mac because Apple's stupid like that. So I had to decline it. Listen, what are they going to do at quarterback? I think it's going to be messy. I think Daboll's going to push to just start the rookie from week 1, but I think there's going to be a lot of Russie, and I think by 0-4, Daboll will get to then start the rookie and say, listen, I now got to coach for my job and show and prove to the owners I'm the right guy to lead this quarterback going forward. So in the NFC West, Rams 4-0. Seattle 3-1.
4-0.
Now, listen, I'm also a hater of the Niners, but I have the Niners at 3-1 and the Cardinals at 2-2. A lot of the NFC West they have a very, very workable schedule for all 4 of those West teams to start. And I wrote down here the NFC South winner at the end of the season, even though I have 3 teams starting with 3 or more wins to start the season, I did a little projecting ahead. Dan, I think the Rams are going to win this division with 10 wins. I really do think the NFC West, you're going to see Seattle, the Niners, and the Rams. It's not easy for them. They have some weird games, all of them. I think the Cardinals are going to be extra scrappy. The division always eats itself alive, and they have tough road games. It's not an easy thing for the NFC West. I think the NFC West winner is maybe the only NFC team that makes it into the playoffs. It's an early, maybe shocking prediction. So mark that down.
All right.
Rams, I will say this about the Rams. Besides the division, so 2 against the Niners, let's say they split that. 2 against the Seattle, let's say they split that. And let's say they sweep the Cardinals. If the Rams, beyond that, they only have 3 tough games: Eagles, Ravens, Lions. Right now, I'd say the Rams are competitive with all those. It's a coin flip at best.
I would agree.
So if the Rams can go 4-2 in division and win 2 of those 3, the rest of the Rams games are kind of that's how the Rams could get to maybe 11 or 12 wins, but that's a maybe. I'm just saying, look out for the Rams. The schedule, when you work it through, for a team that made the playoffs, is actually easier than you'd think. And then finally, the NFC North. Lions 3-1, Bears 3-1, Packers 2-2, Vikings 1-3. Listen, I'll quickly just say for the Bears, because we're going to talk a ton of Bears next week and a ton of Steelers. Vikings, Lions, Dallas, Raider. I personally think it's not heresy to say they're a much better team with a higher upside right now at home versus Dallas. And even though they're on the road against the Raiders, that stadium will be filled with Bears fans. Bears fans travel, especially to Vegas.
And they're a better team.
They're a better team. So if that's 2-0, I think the Bears absolutely. They always play the Lions and the Vikings tough. They'll win one of those 2.
Ben Johnson revenge game type of thing. Yeah,
or at home on Monday Night Football to start the season versus the Vikings. We have no idea what the Vikings are going to look like with McCarthy. And so I don't think it's heresy to say the Bears are 3-1. I just want to put that out there. Lions, again, really workable start to the season. Packers, workable start. Vikings, it's there for them. The problem is, again, I just don't know. I don't have any faith. If the Vikings are 3-1 or 2-2, again, shout out to Kevin O'Connell. He might be a top 3 coach in the NFL if he's able to turn JJ McCarthy into that, because JJ McCarthy comes from a system where he was not asked to throw the football a ton, and he's not the biggest, strongest guy. And you're now being thrust into it after no live reps like at all last year because of an injury.
Yeah. No, that's I can't find too much to disagree with there, and I really hope the Bears have that strong of a start as well. The Packers are a big question mark for me this year, and those first 2 home games for them are going to be a big test because you're playing the Lions and Commanders, 2 very good teams and probably 2 better teams overall. I mean, definitely better quarterbacks coming into that game, and better trenches. So that's going to be tough. And then they go on the road, Browns and Cowboys, and, they can win easily both of those games, but they're road games, and you never know how that's going to fare. So I could see a rougher start for Green Bay to begin the year, conversely with, the Bears and the Lions.
Yeah.
Given their start.
I'll say this. To me, the thing that's interesting about this is when you look at this, if you say to yourself, look at the teams who I have starting off slow: Browns, Colts, Raiders, Jets, Vikings, Saints, Cardinals, Giants. I don't think any of that's shocking just based on what we know from coach and roster. Mm-hmm. And then when you add in that some of them have some brutal schedules, it's not the most shocking thing. I do think, listen, if the Bills are 4-0 to start the year, then they will be the team to beat in the NFL because that's a brutal schedule. And I same with the Chiefs. The Chiefs and the Bills, if they are able to find a way to start 4-0, you're talking about 2 teams that will look head and shoulders above the rest of the NFL 4 weeks into the season because of those schedules. And then in the NFC, the Rams, Seattle, and the Niners have to get off to hot starts because they have some devastatingly tough games from October on. And so I think for all 3 of those teams, it's imperative to start 4-0 or 3-1.
I love it. Fantastic speculation to begin this, jump into the summer. This is what it's all about. This is what the schedule release is meant for. I'm glad we're able to dive in. And as you mentioned and alluded to, we're going to really kind of parse through not just the schedule, but the situations for the Chicago Bears and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because despite us both being diehard fans of those teams, I I do think objectively they are a couple of the more fascinating teams going into this NFL season.
100%. You don't have a quarterback, and I have the head coach that was the desired guy, and a ton of pressure on Caleb Williams. I'll give you this little teaser for the Bears. So we'll break down the Bears schedule and break down the Steelers schedule on next week's episode. And Dan and I will just kind of go all at it piece by piece. One little thing I just want to mention for the Bears. The NFL did not make it easy. 11 of the 17 teams the Bears play. Now, this includes 2 games against the Packers, 2 games against the Vikings, and 2 games against the Lions. So you could argue that number should really be 8 of 17. But 11 of their 17 games were against playoff teams last year. It's not going to be easy, but I will show you next week why I have my 4-step process. It's not an easy process, but I have a 4-step process laid out to getting the Bears to the playoffs.
Denial and acceptance.
Exactly.
Are 2 of the steps.
Exactly. And so I'll break that down. And I'd love to see your step process for the Steelers. Look at the schedule and say, hey, I think there's only really one way to make the Bears, like I feel like Doctor Strange in Avengers Infinity War, where he's like, there's only one chance. We got one. And Tony Stark's looking like, what do you fucking mean? 1 chance out of a trillion? Like, we're screwed. That's kind of how I feel for the Bears. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be more exciting, but there's kind of this like that. There's like a thin rope you got to go through to make the playoffs, but it's possible. It's possible. So I'd love to hear yours for the Steelers as well. And maybe by next week, we'll know if Aaron Rodgers is.
Yeah, maybe we'll know that there's a quarterback that's going to be under center for sure for the Pittsburgh.
Well, he
Steelers.
likes to be he likes to be in shotgun. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's my apologies. But yeah, that'll do it for our
no motion.
No motion. No. We're getting rid of all that. He's running the show. It's ayahuasca time, and we're just here for it. Yeah, I'm excited to see what news may come out over the next week. But if there is none, we will still have a show because we are everlasting here at the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Appreciate you here being with us, and we will see you back next week.